to the Notebook Check Tech Review. In the last video you saw our HP Spectra X2 getting an extensive test, 35 minutes worth of video. Maybe a little bit too much for this channel, not too sure, but we'll take the Lenovo U31 now and give you a little bit of a quicker overview of this Ultrabook. Really, it's a light, consumer-focused 13.3 inch laptop with a full HD screen, available in a number of variants, starting at Core i3 with the Broadwell platform. This is not the latest Skylake platform. Consequently, prices are starting to come down. This version we're testing here was a $999. I've seen it at $949, and also, if you're prepared to go for red, I've seen it for $799, which is actually not a bad deal, because if you have a look at the specs here, you'll see what's inside. We have the Intel Core i7 5500. Sorry, let's just take that away. The Core i7 5500U. You'll see a 1 terabyte SSHD. That's a hard drive, spinning hard drive with an 8 gig cache. You'll see an NVIDIA GeForce 920M, and you'll see 8 gigs of RAM and a weight of 1.5 kilograms. So not too bad. It's kind of consumer Ultrabook space, really. It's a plastic finished device. I'll bring the camera in a minute and we can have a closer look at that. But in general, it looks pretty nice and definitely consumer focused. Let's take a look at some of the ports. There's a decent selection of ports here. Full HDMI. We've got even a gigabit port there. A couple of USB 3 ports, which is pretty good to see. And on the other side, USB, I think that might be 2. And the Lenovo charge port. There's also a full SD card slot and a headset port as well. So you've got a reasonable selection, consumer-focused ports there. Plastics, well, it's plastic and it doesn't feel perfect. If you look closely on the inside, you'll see that some of the fitting is not that brilliant. It's not perfectly fitted there. I can slide my fingernail in between the two sections there. It does, as you can see, fold back to nearly 180 degrees, so I quite like that. There's a little layback mode you can use like that on the sofa, and one of the things I mentioned on the Surface Pro 4 is that you can't reach that mode. You can reach about that angle, and that's it. But it's also very important if you've got it on your lap, you might need it a little bit angled back for a decent view. Let's quickly mention the keyboard here. It's a fairly basic non-backlit chiclet keyboard with a very short throw. For light typists, it might be okay, but it's not that nice in terms of keyboard. There's no real throw on the clicks, not that good, and it feels a bit plasticky, a little bit of flex in the middle, and actually a little bit of flex on the whole casing because it's a plastic casing. On the touchpad, same sort of story. This is really middle of the road touchpad territory. Reasonable click on it and reasonable response, but nothing exceptional like we saw on the Surface Book in the last video. Let's take a look at the screen and the screen characteristics. It is an IPS Full HD matte display, and it's quite nice. When I took it out of the box, it looked like they had a very high contrast, really nice whites. Now let's just take a look at the actual CalMan measurements we did in the lab. There's the brightness, not a completely high brightness for sort of outdoor use, which is a shame because this is a matte screen that could be used outdoor. 293 is the mains power maximum middle brightness. On battery, 233. So again, something that you won't be using outdoors a lot because that brightness is just not high enough. The shame because the contrast is quite good, 814, over 1000 is good, 800 is okay, acceptable, and the color accuracy there, under 5, so pretty good in terms of color accuracy. If you take a look at the comparison, we've got a comparison down here, there we are, you'll see some other similar devices in that category. ASUS V3. The one I was interested in was the UX305LA, which is also a Core i7 powered device, and the colors are slightly better than that, although the contrast is low, and that goes up against that UX305 and the UX303 as well pretty closely. So we've got a Broadwell Core i7 5500U here, which clocks up to 3 GHz single core, 2.7 or 2.8 in dual core mode. Hasn't got the highest power GPU in there in terms of HD graphics, but you've got the 930M inside. So I'll take a look at some gaming graphics scores for you in a minute, but let's just look at the CPU scores first. Cinebench R11.5 Multi, 3.07 marks there on the Cinebench mark, which is actually pretty good, and on the OpenGL 44.28. So that's that 930M graphics card kicking in there. So there's only a single bank of memory in here, so you haven't got dual channel memory. And this is an SSHD, so an SSD cache supported hard drive. You kind of notice that when you do big file transfers, anything up to a sort of gigabyte or anything up to about half a gigabyte transfers really quickly, and then you see the speeds drop off as that cache starts to fill up and starts to empty out the other side. PC Mark 7 score 3819 is pretty good. So this is a device that you could use for home office, no problem. In fact, you could probably use it for business use as well, given that nice matte screen. You probably want to add an external keyboard on it and a mouse, though, if you want to use it all day. But in terms of performance there, certainly on the CPU side, the memory side, and the storage side, not too bad. Let's just take a closer look at the storage scores. There's an image of the internals there showing the storage, Western Digital 2.5-inch 1 terabyte drive. Easy to replace, that's the point there. You can get that out fairly easily. If you wanted to drop in a 0.5 terabyte of SSD, you could. That's a SATA interface there that you can do that with. Let's look at the speeds though. I want to look at the Crystalmark scores. Sequential read 87.5. This is typical of a spinning hard drive. And the 4K read and writes, well, they will be slightly faster with the SSD cache, so for opening programs and for initial file transfers, a little bit higher than that, but 4K read and 4K write is pretty low, and that might be one of the bottlenecks here. Certainly if you're doing getting this out the box and it's doing indexing, it's doing updating, if you're doing a virus scan or defender scan, zip file unzipping, and all those sort of bitty things that can go in the background, those will slow down a lot. And you might see in some cases new applications that you start up take a long time to load. Right, let's have a look at the graphics here, because if you consider that 799 offer I just saw on Amazon Germany, and you've got the 930M inside here. Sorry, I keep saying the 930. It's actually the 920M. The GeForce 920M inside here is a discrete graphics card. Look at the 3D Mark 11 scores you're getting there, 1,849 for the U31. And let's just go down to that U305CA. That's the Core M version of that, 1151 with its HD graphics 515. You can see the UX303 there with a 940M beating it with 2,485. Have we got the Surface Book score in here? No, I like that for a comparison, but we haven't got that in the list there. So reasonable 3D Mark scores. Let's just go down to some gaming test results we've got for you. As you can see, there's some entry-level gaming possible here. Slightly better than, for example, the Mix 700 that we tested recently, the Spectra X2 that we tested yesterday, which really are, despite their full SSD configuration, just entry level. There's a little bit more to it on this one. You've got some decent scores for low settings on Tomb Raider, on Grid Autosport and Dirt Rally there. Even Star Wars Battlefront, a recent game, 34.7 on low settings. If you're Minecrafting, if you're World of Warcrafting, you should have no problem on this, and that's a pretty good score for this price level, given that $799 red version offer. Let's mention noise and heat and throttling very quickly. This does spin up the fans pretty quickly. Putting it under a load test there, I did with, I can just bring that up, I did with Cyberlink Power Director. I was doing some rendering. It started to heat up and the fan sped up pretty quickly. The good side, the good point, the good news is that it doesn't throttle back too much. So I saw some throttling back, and in our test we also saw some throttling back as well, but not much. It seems to be stable at 2.6, 2.7. gigahertz, so that's pretty good. The only thing I will say that in my rendering tests, I noticed that the HD 5500 with its maximum 950 gigahertz clock on the GPU is actually a little bit slower than the Surface Pro 3 from the previous generation, from the Haswell generation. And in fact, the recent Core M5 and Core M7 devices with the 515 graphics were actually faster. So the Mix 700 with its Core M, the UX305 with its Core M, and the Spectra X2 with its Core M may be faster if you're doing video rendering. So bear that in mind. Although you've got that nice terabyte storage in here, you might want to think about that HD 5500 having the fairly limited GPU. If your software supports the 920M, you might get a little bit more out of it, but certainly in the PowerDirector 14 rendering test that I was using, the NVIDIA GPU was not enabled in that program, so we couldn't use it. So if you're relying on Intel QuickSync, bear that in mind. I already briefly measured the upgrade capabilities here. Take a look at the back. It's fairly easy to get those screws out, get the back off, and you can have access to that single bank of memory and the hard drive. Now, because this has got a hard drive in here, what you've got is limited space for the battery, and that is the big problem here. You've got a 35 watt-hour battery in a 1.5 kilogram device. That calculation doesn't add up to me. A 1.5 kilogram Ultrabook should have a bigger battery than 35 watt hours. So let's just take a closer look at the battery life report, battery life test results we got in our testing. There's the 35 watt battery inside. You can see just to the left there the SSD on the left hand side. Sorry, the hard drive, SSD hard drive. And here are the battery run times. Wi-Fi surfing, although quite efficient, 4 hours and 13 minutes is not that great. You're probably looking for something a little bit more than that if you're spending €1,000. Well, when it gets down to the 699 level, which it might do as the price seems to be coming down quite quickly on this, then maybe that'd be acceptable. And because this is not an outdoor device, because that screen brightness is not really for outdoor, you might be having it on mains power anyway, so the battery runtime may not be too bad. As a desktop, as a mobile desktop, sorry, a hot desking desktop, something you take from one place to another, this could actually be worth the money. Big Buck Bunny H.264 at 150 nits. It's quite a nice screen, but 4 hours and 33 minutes is not a great video playback figure. So overall, before I go into the pros and cons and our overall summary score and breakdown of scores, I'd just like to add that this is a nice looking consumer focused laptop, and I think you should be watching out for pricing on this. At $999, this seems a little bit too expensive for the battery life it gives, and certainly some of the performance and the casing that we're seeing here. But if prices are coming down, and remember this is a Broadwell generation Ultrabook, you might see the new versions come in with Skylake, and you'll see these prices drop probably fairly quickly. So you might want to think about a strike price of around $699. Bear in mind you've got Core i5 versions, Core i3 versions as well with 128 gig SSD. So there's a whole range. I think about 15 different models that I'm seeing in Europe for this Lenovo U31. Right, let's have a look at the pros and cons and break down the score for you. If you've just fast forwarded to this section of the video, you're welcome, but please think about giving us a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to the video so that we can notify you of new videos as they go up in the channel. Fairly succinct set of pros and cons there. Bright, high contrast screen in our tests, and both subjectively. As I took this out of the box, it looked really nice. We've got a full HD resolution as well. It's IPS and it's matte, so really a nice screen all round there. Storage, pretty good. In this version, the 1 terabyte of storage with the SSD cache, 8 gigs, well, you're losing a bit of performance, but you're gaining that storage there. So if you're carrying this around to do maybe some video editing, carrying around large files, large video files for playback, that's quite an advantage there. A terabyte of storage, always worth having. The 920M gives you a little bit of gaming. Low medium gaming, so just a bit more than the entry levels of the Ultrabooks that might not come with a discrete GPU there. And really the big negative point is the battery life. 34 watt hour battery is not big, and you'll notice it. You'll need to keep the charging cable nearby. I guess one of the advantages of the 35 watt hour battery is that it charges fairly quickly. I saw 50% in just 45 minutes, so at least you'll be able to charge fairly quickly off that. I'll also mention that I think it's a little bit plastic. There's a little bit of play in that screen, and you want to be a little bit careful about scratching the device. But overall seems to be pretty good, nice and stylish, and there's a good set of ports there. So price, it's all about price on this one. If you find a good price for the Lenovo U31, if you're happy with the slightly limited keyboard, lack of backlight, and if you find a good version at a good price, then strike and go for it. Let's just take a look at the score breakdown there. We gave it a weighted average in the sub-notebook class of 81%, and you'll see breakdowns of various scores there. So if you've got a requirement, if you've got a set of requirements in your head, take a look at the full review, try and match that to the breakdown of the scores or the sub scores that we got there. You might find that it actually is worth more than 81% to you. That was the Lenovo U31, kind of an ultrabook, sub notebook aimed at consumers, and looks like the price is going down and could be a reasonable price soon, so keep a lookout for it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Next up on the channel, what have we got? I've got a couple of Lenovo's I need to test. One is the ThinkPad Yoga, so that might be next. I've also got the Surface Book that I need to do the review on, although we've done a couple of sort of preview and overview videos of that already. I will do a full review of that either today or tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next Notebook Check Tech Review.